Hi there. Welcome to Philosophy 252, the history of modern philosophy at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Um, this video is for the web section of this course. There's also a face-to-face section that runs concurrently. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but first, some basic introductions. That's the whole purpose of this short video, is basic introduction to me, to the course, give you a sense of the themes and topics that this course is going to cover, and give you some sense of the mechanics and structure of the course, how the assignments are going to be structured. So where shall we start? We'll start with me. I'm Dr. Adam Rosenfeld. I'm the instructor for this course. If you took Philosophy 251, the history of ancient philosophy, and judging by the roster, a lot of you have, you'll recognize me from that class. This course is very similar in structure to the history of ancient philosophy, although obviously it's going to cover some different material. How shall we begin? Let's start by what this course is about. Obviously, it's the history of modern philosophy. So what's that mean? Oftentimes when people hear about modern philosophy, or when they hear folks talk about modern philosophy, what they think is that we're talking about stuff that's current, stuff that's cutting edge, stuff that, like, anything that's modern, people think that it's up to date, it's now, whatever's going on now, that's what's modern. This is not the case when we're talking about historical periods. The modern period covers a very specific period of history running from the early 1600s to, depending on who you talk to or what kinds of things you're focused on, either to like the end of the 1700s or to the middle of the 1800s. So that's not like what's going on now. It's actually a little bit old, I guess, depending on your frame of reference. When we want to talk about philosophy that's being done currently, that's being done now, we usually refer to that as contemporary philosophy. So modern philosophy, contemporary philosophy, not the same thing. Now, there's certainly a distinctive flavor to this modern period. There's a reason why historians tend to kind of like identify it as a thing, as a kind of like some kind of movement in thought. We're going to be exploring that period in two intertwined threads. One of those threads is going to kind of roughly trace the philosophical groundwork that's laid down for the emergence and kind of establishment of modern science as we know it. So we're going to be looking at some epistemology, which is the kind of subdiscipline within philosophy where we discuss what it means to know and how it is that we know. And you can think of like how it is that our ideas about this are changing as modern science really starts to kind of gain some momentum and begin to establish itself. We're going to be looking at modern metaphysics, which gets at questions not so much about like, well, what can we know, but what does reality have to be like insofar as we have the experiences that we do? What are the appearances behind, what are the realities behind our appearances? There's also going to be a significant amount of philosophy of mind that gets dealt with, and that seems kind of perhaps not all that surprising if we're talking about what it means to know and what reality is like. We're going to start raising these questions about like what the relationship between our mind and world is, such that we can say that we're engaged in activities that are producing knowledge. So that's the first of the two threads that we're going to be chasing. It's this rise of modern science, looking at modern metaphysics, epistemology, and philosophy of mind. There's a parallel conversation that's going on at the same time that's not wholly unrelated to the rise of modern science, and that's kind of this rise of liberal democracy as we know it, that begins at the beginning of the modern period and kind of like we see kind of eventually evolving into the end of early modernity and into mid and late modernity. So for that thread, we're going to be looking at the political and moral philosophy that is found amongst the kind of like big modern thinkers. A lot of that's going to get cashed out in terms of beginning a discussion about where the legitimacy of government comes from and under what conditions we might say that a people might overthrow a government and where they would be justified in overthrowing a government. So political revolution basically is there's a whole laying down of the theories of political revolution. In addition to that, a theory of rights and a discussion of where it is that these rights come from and what sorts of things we can say that what kinds of rights we can say that citizens have. such that when we start talking about justifications for overthrowing a government, we might make appeals to those rights. So those are those two threads. We're going to take on that first thread in the first half of the course, and in the second half of the course, we'll kind of go back to the beginning of the modern period and we'll read through it again, but focused on political and moral thinkers. The way that we're going to be engaging with philosophical thought through the modern era is we're going to be reading primary texts. We're going to be reading what big thinkers through this modern era were writing about. We'll read some stuff from Rene Descartes. We'll read plenty of stuff from John Locke. We'll read him twice. We'll read some stuff from David Hume. We'll read plenty of stuff by Immanuel Kant, some stuff by Thomas Hobbes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Mary Wollstonecraft. We'll be reading primary texts for all of these figures. And all of these readings are pretty old and they're in the public domain, so I don't see any reason why you have to purchase a textbook. They've all been made available to you online via Canvas. And in fact, all of the readings are posted already. If you wanted to try to jump ahead, you probably could. Those readings, because they're posted online, raise this question of like, okay, so I guess now the students are expected to read them online, and you may. I recommend that you do try to print these out because it's important that you be able to take notes. It maybe is important that like you're not staring at screens for too long. I think a lot of evidence is starting to come out that this isn't really so good for us. It screws up your circadian rhythms. It creates eye strain. It creates like bad posture, forward head when you're looking at the computer screen. So maybe you do want to print these things out. I do want you to be reading these readings very carefully, and you're going to have to read them carefully because they're really difficult. Some of the stuff that we're reading, I would say the stuff from Immanuel Kant in his Prolegomena to Any Future Metaphysics, has a really good chance of being the hardest stuff you'll ever read. Certainly the hardest stuff that you'll read as an undergraduate student. So you really are going to have to spend some time with these texts, and you're really going to have to mark them up and try to dissect them. It's going to take some work. I think a lot of people have this experience with a philosophy class when they're taking it for the first time, or at least any philosophy class where they are asked to read primary source texts. They find the reading to be really, really difficult and really slow going. And you should know that for myself, somebody who has a fair amount of expertise with reading philosophical texts, I'll let you know that I find them difficult too. I find it really slow going, sometimes very frustrating. But the nature of reading philosophy is such that like you have to go through it slowly. You have to let the ideas digest. There are some tips for reading on the syllabus. I recommend that you check them out. And if you have any questions or if you're encountering some real difficulties with the readings, I strongly suggest that you reach out to me and ask for some tips. And do know that I know that this is one of the more difficult aspects of this class. This is a course that's focused on getting you to read difficult texts and make some sense of them. Now, of course, we'll discuss these texts as well. I'll be discussing them with the face-to-face section of this course that runs parallel to this one, and I'll be posting lecture videos where you see me talking about these texts and you hear the discussion that's being generated in the face-to-face classroom about this. Also, whenever you have a reading assignment, you'll have a reading quiz. The reading quizzes are, well, the real reason for the reading quizzes is that I know that if I don't have some kind of accountability for the reading assignments, and I just say like, read Meditations 1 and 2 in Descartes' Meditations. If you guys are busy, if you have other stuff going on, you might not do the reading. But if I have that reading quiz, there's that extra little bit of accountability that makes sure that everybody does the reading. So that's one reason why you have the reading quiz. It's to make sure that you actually did the reading. Another reason why we have that reading quiz is that it is there to kind of catch big misconceptions. The reading quiz is going to direct your attention towards certain passages and make sure that you're picking up kind of the really big ideas, the really kind of like the important movements in the arguments that these authors are making, such that when you come to a discussion, when you come to like watch a lecture video, or when you come to one of the discussion board discussions, we can already expect that everybody has a kind of like a basic understanding of the text before we start digging into some of the more subtle and difficult aspects of the text. So those reading quizzes are really built to kind of be a first kind of a rough filter to kind of catch any big misconceptions. If you're not doing well on those reading quizzes, it should be a flag for you that you're missing something, that you're having some kind of difficulty in interpreting the reading. If you're doing quite well on those reading quizzes, you should know that this doesn't mean that you've mastered the material yet, just that you've got those basics and you're ready to have a more subtle sort of a discussion. All of those reading quizzes are going to allow you to make multiple attempts. I believe it's 3 attempts. So if you don't do so well on the first attempt, that's okay. You get 2 more tries, and hopefully you're using those reading quizzes to kind of self-diagnose misconceptions and fix those before you have to watch the lecture video and listen to me kind of dig a little bit deeper before you try to participate in the discussion on one of the discussion boards. In addition to reading assignments and reading quizzes, I'll also occasionally post a reflection prompt in which I'm asking you to engage with the readings and the discussions that we've been having in a slightly more critical way. For each of those reflection prompts, whenever I post them, and there will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 throughout the semester, what I'll do is I'll post that prompt, and then I'll open a discussion board where the whole class is required to discuss that prompt in a way that kind of allows you to collectively brainstorm how it is that you want to approach writing your reflection draft. So all through the week, the discussion board's going to be going on, and at the end of the week, you have to write your own reflection draft. Those discussion boards are going to be structured in such a way that the class is divided into groups, and some groups are going to be making first round posts, and other groups are going to be responding to the people who make the first round posts in order to create an actual back and forth between people that sometimes is a little bit elusive in a discussion board assignment. So those discussion boards are intended to set up the reflection drafts, and the reflection drafts I'm just going to be grading on a completion basis. Those reflection drafts are there for you in order to use writing as a tool for working through the material and trying to come to insights, and also kind of just getting ideas down while they're fresh, while we're kind of covering that material in the semester. At the end of the semester, I'm going to ask you to go back through those reflection drafts that you've written and that you've gotten completion grades on, and really not a whole lot more direct feedback from me on that. And pick one that you really want to polish and develop into a final paper for the course. In that final paper, I'm also going to require that you include 2 secondary sources in addition to the primary sources that were assigned for the course. And there's a library of options, the things that are available to use as secondary sources that's already posted on Canvas. You don't have to limit yourself to those sources, and in fact, I recommend that you go to the library yourself, do some internet sleuthing, and try to find some other academic sources, but they do need to be academic sources. Now, while those reflection drafts are graded on the basis of completion and are really there as tools for you to be using, both to kind of work through the material and to kind of get some ideas down so that you have some sense of what you want to write your final paper about, that final paper is going to be graded in a way more rigorous way. There's going to be a rubric that's provided for that, and there's a whole section on Canvas that gives you some tips for writing philosophy. It's an unfortunate reality of the logistics of a course this large that there just really aren't enough human resources to give feedback on your drafts. The only place that I'm going to be able to critically engage with your writing is going to be in that final draft. But I have posted some resources on Canvas to give you some tips for writing, and I recommend that you check those out, especially if you're new to philosophical writing, especially if you'd like to become a better writer, which, let's be honest, that really should be all of us. We could all become better writers. And in addition to that, kind of in lieu of offering feedback on everybody's reflection drafts, I'll be posting some sample drafts where I go into some pretty gnarly detail about what it is that I think they're doing well and what it is that I think that they can improve on if they wanted to turn that draft into a final draft. And if at any point you have a reflection draft that you're like, man, I really want to write my final paper about this, but I need some feedback before I can feel a little more certain, contact me and let me know, and I might be able to use one of your reflection drafts as an anonymized sample draft that I analyze for the whole class. So we've got reading assignments, reading quizzes on those assignments. There will be lecture videos that I post of the discussions of that material in the face-to-face class. There will be reflection prompts with discussion boards that allow you guys to kind of work together to brainstorm ideas and then write your reflection drafts. And from those reflection drafts, you'll develop a final paper. The only other thing that's missing as a big course component are exams. There will be 2 exams. One of those exams will be for the first half of the class, that unit on metaphysics, epistemology, and philosophy of mind in the modern era. And then the second exam will be at the end of class at the conclusion of that second unit on political theory and moral philosophy in the modern era. So hopefully that gives you some sense of what it is that you're getting into in this course. Please do, if you haven't already, read through the syllabus. It's posted on Canvas. Also posted on Canvas is the syllabus quiz, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a quiz on the syllabus to make sure that you read the syllabus. You'll also note that there's a tentative schedule posted on Canvas that gives you a sense of which topics we're going to be covering when throughout the semester and when major assignments are going to be posted. All of the readings for the whole semester are already posted. All of the reading quizzes for the whole semester are already posted. I believe some of the reflection prompts have been posted, but not all of them. Know that there will be more reflection prompts. None of the discussion boards have been posted yet, so know that there will be discussion boards periodically throughout the semester and that I'll be posting them along the way. I'll post them at the beginning of the week and kind of give you some heads up of what the rest of that week is going to look like. And of course, the exams haven't been posted yet. Those are going to be posted at the end of the first unit and then again at the end of the second unit. If you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out and contact me and ask me those questions. Even if you don't have any questions, reaching out and contacting your professors and getting to know them is never really a terrible idea. If, because this is an online class, some folks are in the Greensboro area and can stop by and see me in my office for face-to-face office hours. If you can do that, I strongly recommend it. It's a very easy way for us to have a conversation. Email, by comparison, is kind of a difficult way to talk about philosophy because the kind of back and forth is really, really slow. Video chat does a whole lot better. So if you can't make it to campus to see me face-to-face, and it seems like email is not really working, maybe we can set up a time to do a video chat. But yeah, aside from that, if you have any other questions, please do let me know. I'm excited about the semester and looking forward to hearing what it is that you guys have to say about the material that we're going to be reading and covering. Bye.